Being fine with that monster as an enemy is proof I've gone insane. Only a fool would make any more enemies at this point. Jerknev shook his head. Unfortunately, this is a very important meeting. I can have you in the room. It will be awfully difficult to protect you if we ray not in the room, your majesty. I trust these two. They'll be here with me. I am sure they would be able to buy time until you arrive. Well, that's true. The gibbon, who had been silent until now, spoke. But if your opponent was an assassin on par with Esdea, you might be in trouble. Someone on par with me, like the little lady from Igenia. She uses ninjutsu, so she pounces at you from the shadows. Your two warriors will be unbeatable against an opponent who relies on a sword. But what about magic? I can help but be anxious about that scenario. Besides, I think we would be so absorbed by the match that we wouldn't have any interest in your meeting. They all tried to persuade him, but after having gone this far to avoid any leaks, he couldn't accept their proposal. Your worries are valid. But as the emperor, I mustn't yield on this point. The eyes of Argenti gathered on their leader. He heaved a sigh. Then I suppose we have no choice. As the emperor, you must have conversations we can be privy to. Very well, we'll be on watch outside. Could you tell us what sort of people will be coming? That's a natural question. But you fellows didn't see anything. Got it? Of course. No matter who comes, that information will never spill from our lips. And if it does leak, we'll take responsibility and handle it. Then I'll trust you. It's the High Priest of the Fire Shrine and the High Priest of the Wind Shrine, plus 4 priests who will probably accompany them. I see. Then if anyone else arrives, we'll be on our guard. Yes, that is what I would like from you. This guest box is somewhat removed from the others. No one should end up here lost. Understood. And your majesty, do you mind if we break the lock on the door? If you think it is necessary, go ahead and do it. Farn strode forward. The handles of his battle axes were creaking. A human grip would never produce that sound. Jerknev felt that force might be a bit overkill for just breaking the lock, but he wasn't a warrior, so he couldn't say anything. His two knights were whispering to each other, which bothered him. Farn slowly lifted the battle axes over his head. "Oh, don't break the door." At Freywalt's shout, Farn paused. Jerknev couldn't help but shift his eyebrows. Why not? "Are we going to say sorry? We were going to break the lock, but we accidentally broke the door too, so we'll just stay in here with you." "No, not this time. I don't want to get involved in messy politics." "Me neither. I have no interest in being any more suspect in the eyes of the shrines." "Got it. Then this should be enough." A battle axe glided down to strike the lock, easily breaking it. Was he supposed to be disgusted or offended? There were many reactions to choose from, but Jerknev was impressed. Just what I'd expect from adamantite adventurers, he thought. It wasn't just that the battle axe had broken the lock easily. It was that they had the guts to talk like that in front of the nation's highest authority, and it took arrogance to ignore the client's wishes. Even if the client was the emperor, they wanted to do their best job possible. Those were things Jerknev had lost. Maybe I should drag these guys deep into a political mess. A mess so deep and sticky they can't escape. The moment he murmured that, the members of Argenti ran out the door as fast as fleeing rabbits. Their movements seemed to have been prearranged. The three left in the room looked at one another. That was amazing. Being able to move as one like that without saying a word is just, well, it's as expected, isn't it? They ray adamantite precisely because they can move like that. I am not sure what to say, but I think we admire them for slightly different reasons, your majesty. Shall I prepare beverages? Yeah. Thanks, will you do that? Understood. You too, Sir Basswood. At the suggestion that he help prep, Basswood made a sour face. He said, me too, your majesty. Shouldn't you have brought along at least one maid? The drinks will taste better if a girl pours them instead of us grimy old men. At least they definitely would for me. Yes, that's enough whining. Get twice as busy with actual drink prep now, Sir Basswood. I am counting on you, Basswood. There's no sense in worrying about what we lack. We have to make do with what we've got. It's the same as the Empire's current situation. That comparison is no good, your majesty, Basswood said as he got to work. They could hear the cheers from the arena below. A war cry went up that was a bit different from a beast's. It seemed as though the next match had begun. Jerknev searched his memories. The match before the one with the Martial King would be adventurers versus a monster. When adventurers were in the arena, the fights were often flashier due to bursts of magic. This made them popular with the crowd. Looking down at his enthusiastic subjects, Jerknev remarked, "This is what peace looks like." "You think so, your majesty?" He was talking to himself, so he hadn't expected a reply. When he turned, it was Basswood standing there. Nimble was behind him with a disapproving face. He was doing enough work for both of them. It doesn't seem very peaceful to me. Look. One of the adventurers took a beast claw. Blood sprayed into the air. The crowd's shrieks and cheers grew louder. It's not about the match but the audience. Jerkniv gazed at the roaring spectators. Isn't this quite peaceful compared to what's going on in the Empire right now? I just think, if they knew that a monster was lurking just beneath the surface, would they be able to enjoy this as much? Isn't it fine that it's peaceful? Giving all the people stomach pains wouldn't get us anywhere, would it? Basswood was right. Jerkniv regretted being so petty. It's just as you say, Basswood. Now then, our guest will be here soon. Are we about ready? Yes, Your Majesty. Someone didn't help me at all, so I wasn't sure I would make it in time. But the drinks and papers are all ready. We also have plenty of ink. They had prepared a surprising amount of documentation as a precaution against anyone listening in. The cheers were loud. There were no adjacent rooms, so there were only a handful of ways to spy on them. But extra caution never hurt. He knew it was a pain. He had done it in the palace, and it was exhausting. All of these complications stemmed from the fact that the Nation of Darkness's power was an unknown. Once he knew what it could and couldn't do, he could change their countermeasures accordingly. The scheme to investigate it during the war had borne painful results and caused a tragedy, but that didn't mean he could give up. If he didn't come up with a new plan and look into things in a safer way than the previous time, he would be jumping at his enemy's shadow forever. He would be driven into a situation where he jumped at shadows and abandoned even a good plan. He still couldn't forget that awful feeling. If we could just figure out Ain't Ulgaun's limits the King of Darkness, then maybe we wouldn't need to do so much prep work. Back then, he had been able to make requests as a supporter, but now that they were both rulers, it was practically impossible to ask anything of him. Or rather, he could ask, but when he thought about what might be demanded in return, his head hurt. It's not only the King of Darkness, Your Majesty. We need to figure out what his retainers are capable of too, right? There's no way his subordinates would be more powerful than him, right? Jerkniv answered with a laugh, but he broke out in a cold sweat as he said it. He had the four, who were much stronger than him, as his own subordinates. So he couldn't confidently say they wouldn't be. What the one on top needed wasn't simple brawn but something else. So what if that went for Ain't Ulgaun as well? No, it couldn't be. Listen, Nimble, your thinking is flawed, got it? Yes, Your Majesty, do excuse me. If that was the truth, they would be done for. He wanted them to at least be equal, but he would pray to the gods if the subordinates could be lesser. He really didn't have enough information. Maybe we should move ahead with the plan to get intelligence out of that dark elf girl despite the danger. He'll talk to the theocracy about importing a ton of elves and use those too somehow. And what about that boy Aura? Nah, he's still such a child. He doubts he's interested in women. Besides, he seems pretty aggressive. Just as Jerkniv was settling into some lengthy contemplation, there was a knock on the door. As expected, it was Freywaltz. Your guests have arrived, Your Majesty, 6 in all. I've met the high priests before, so I am sure it's them. Then let them in. As he said that, he heard Daya's challenging voice from the open door. Oops, not so fast. You fellows in the rear, the numbers are as expected, but a couple of you smell like me. I've heard of disciplinary squads belonging to shrine squads for rubbing out priests who break the precepts, but I thought they were a rumor. I am surprised too. Who do you guys work for? Oh brother, what's all this? You could have just let us through. For starters, you seem to have misunderstood something. We were invited here by His Imperial Majesty with proper reason. If you show us hostility, you'll only be displeasing him. Then how about you wait right there a minute? I'll ask him if what you're saying is true or not. When Jerkniv poked his head out, he saw the high priests of the fire and water shrines, plus 4 others he didn't know. They wore deep hoods that hid their faces. Nothing could have been shadier. Since it was his first time meeting them, there was no way to know if they were really from the theocracy or not. But the high priests were there. If he didn't trust them, the conversation wouldn't even begin. If they argued and everything fell through, the King of Darkness would be happy. These are the people I was waiting for. Sorry, but could you let them in? The members of our gentry looked suspicious, but they let everyone through right away. Even after the door was shut, his guests didn't remove their hoods. Jerkniv couldn't comment on that breach of etiquette. They were probably on guard, just as he was against the King of Darkness, of course. I am terribly sorry my guards caused you trouble. You needn't worry. And actually, those two are just as the adamantite adventurers said. Two messengers from the theocracy took seats. The two in back remained standing. Jerkniv wrote scripture on a piece of paper with his pen. The slight smile in reply said more than words. He was correct. The theocracy was said to have special ops units called scriptures. It had to be members of one of those 6 groups. Now then, more importantly, let us enjoy the match. The main fight should be starting soon, right? Jerkniv nodded. The main event meant the audience would be at peak excitement. They would be totally worked up. That would make it extremely difficult to listen in on their conversation. Hence the choice of this time and place for their meeting. The messenger seated next to Jerkniv reached into his breast pocket. He took out a letter and handed it to him. Jerkniv unfolded the letter slightly. He took care that no one could peek from the side or behind him. There were questions written on it. The gist of it was, why did you ask the King of Darkness to use a spell like that? Next was about the Empire's position going forward. How much intelligence do you have on the Nation of Darkness? It was written politely, but in essence, they were grilling him. Was the reason they had brought it here, instead of sending it ahead of time, that the theocracy was also wary of how far the King of Darkness's reach might extend? Did they not trust the Empire? Jerkniv was mildly offended. However, considering the Empire's relationship with the Nation of Darkness so far, it was only natural that the theocracy would have trouble trusting it. As Jerkniv was about to write his reply, a cheer louder than the rest sounded. It seemed like the match had begun. His Imperial Majesty Emperor El Nix will be watching the main event today. Everyone, please turn your attention to the box seat up above. The announcer's voice boomed via magic item amplification. Excuse me for a moment. Jerkniv stood to show his face to the crowd below. All his subjects cheered for him at once. A gentle smile graced his regular features as he raised a hand in reply. Women sent up shrill cries. Jerkniv was satisfied that his popularity hadn't waned. Thank you. Now then, everyone, the first Martial King match in quite some time is about to begin. It seems to be taking a little while to get ready, so please be patient a bit longer. The Martial King, Jerkniv murmured. Once, he asked Basswood what would happen if all of the 4 challenged the Martial King. Basswood laughed and said they didn't have a chance. The answer disturbed him, so he had flew to collect information about the fighter. What he learned was that the Martial King was incredibly strong. It was almost unfair. Your Majesty, who is even facing him? The messenger asked. Jerkniv didn't have the answer. I don't know either. Apparently this match got set up quite suddenly. They kept it secret to make an even bigger splash. It's not even on the program. I see, said the messenger. Well, to go up against the Martial King one-on-one, it would have to be an adamantite plate adventurer. But the members of Argenti are here. Is it someone from the 8 Ripples? Honestly, I am hard-pressed to approve of precious adamantite adventurers participating in a death match spectacle. I can deny that, said Jerkniv, but power is alluring. This is the prime place to put power on display and inspire people to dream of being so strong one day themselves. The High Priest in service of the Fire God and the Supreme Authority in the Empire for Fire God believers interjected. That's true, but considering the Empire's current situation, I am not sure if doing something that could result in weakened fighting power is the smartest move. The Martial King is the strongest person in the Empire. Couldn't we get him involved somehow? I didn't expect that coming from you gentlemen. The slain theocracy valued humans, or it was probably more accurate to say they didn't accept any other races. In a world with diverse races, it was impressive they could maintain their country despite others knowing that fact. Or was a single race a condition for building a powerful nation? I was just suggesting an idea personally. The country has nothing to do with it. That's enough chit-chat then. May we have your answers, Your Majesty? Yeah, and all right, sorry to keep you waiting, everyone. The challenger is about to enter the arena. Jerkniv had taken up a pen to write an answer to the first question, but his hand stopped. He was curious about who was brave enough to challenge the Martial King. If they were accepted as a challenger, it meant they could at least expect a good fight. Was there even anyone left in the Empire like that? If it was someone valuable who felt like serving the Empire, he would be fine hiring them even if they lost. He might be fine giving them the slot in the 4 that opened up with the loss of Unshakable. I am sure many of you have heard whispers of our challenger's name. And now he is here, the King of the Nation of Darkness. His Majesty ain't ul gown, huh? Jerknev yelped idiotically without thinking. It was as if the meaning of the speaker's words had passed straight through his head. As the arena descended into confusion, the noble box was silent. Jerknev looked around to confirm that everyone had heard the same thing that he did. Ain't ul gown? It couldn't be. Of course it couldn't be. A king would never appear in combat at another country's arena. Anyone with common sense knew that was the obvious truth. Ain't ul gown wasn't some savage. In the first place, he'd been keeping a close eye on the Nation of Darkness's movements. If the King of Darkness entered the Empire, alerting Jerknev had been designated as a top priority. Whether he was in the inner palace or whatever state he was in, arrangements had been made to get word to him. So then, why hadn't he heard anything? Did he enter the country in secret? Would he do that and show up at the arena? What was he thinking? It couldn't be, could it? Of all the ridiculous things, Jerknev shuddered. Then, moving just his eyes, he looked at the messenger from the theocracy. Their eyes were sharp beneath their hood. There was only one thing that gaze could mean. Well, if their positions were reversed, he would have arrived at the same conclusion. They thought Jerknev was the one who called the King of Darkness here. Wait, this is a trap. Yes. This was a conspiracy orchestrated by Ain't ul gown. He had to get them to understand, come to terms with that fact, or he was in trouble. The Nation of Darkness, or you chose the location, Your Majesty, and we only learned it a few hours ago. That was true. He had waited to the last minute to avoid leaks. Jerknev frantically tried to think who knew. There were extremely few, all people he could trust, or could he? It's possible someone was manipulated for information, using magic. This definitely wasn't his scheme. As proof, why would he be so panicked if he had planned it? You expect us to believe that? You didn't mean to get us caught in the crossfire, or have you sold us out? He couldn't get them to trust him at all. Well, of course he couldn't if their positions were reversed. He would be just as accusing. But how did the information leak? Or wait, did it? Maybe this was all according to his plan. He put out the bait and waited for him to bite. Chills ran down his spine. How far ahead had the King of Darkness read his moves? There was a good chance that everything from the beginning until now was part of his calculations. That's the sort of opponent the King of Darkness is, Jerknev's intelligent mind answered. How far does this plan of his go? No, this is no time to be terrified of his plot. He's got to hurry. This is bad. We need to get out, but it was too late. The intruder's voice sounded. It was a voice like a hunter glad to see his prey caught in the trap he set. Sir Jerknev Rune Farlord El Nix, long time no see. When he turned around, desperately trying to get his breathing under control, the King of Darkness had risen from the center of the arena to the level of the guest box. The reason he had revealed his horrifying face had to be to prove it was really him. It has, indeed, few. Yes, it has, Sir Gown. I never imagined we would meet in a place like this. He didn't know what to say. He felt that anything he said would be taken as a commitment. This made his lips as impossible to open as if they had been glued shut. I thought the same thing. Coincidences sure are astounding. He snickered with a sinister smile. It was clear that he didn't believe it was a coincidence. There was no doubt about it. Jerknev was sure. This was all part of Ain't ul gown's plot. He was putting pressure on Jerknev by occupying the site of the secret meeting with the theocracy. At the same time, he was preventing the two countries from joining forces. He was also putting pressure on the theocracy. Ain't was a monster of a genius. Jerknev wiped the sweat from his hands on his clothes. There had to be a fairly extensive leak of Empire intelligence. So how much did he know? Jerknev frantically spun the wheels of his brain. The horrifying light in the King of Darkness's orbits shifted to the messenger from the theocracy. Are those acquaintances of yours, Your Majesty? Ain't's question rendered Jerknev speechless. This was no simple question. It was a test. Should he lie and protect the theocracy, or should he take the King of Darkness's side and sell them out? It was so crafty, it made him feel sick. He had the feeling the expressionless skull face was warped in a wicked way. Jerknev being unable to open his mouth probably amused him. What is it, Sir Elnixer, Sir Jerknev? You've gone a bit pale. Are you not feeling well? It was creepy and terrifying because it sounded like he actually cared. It was only natural, as a human being, to be frightened of that sense of someone gleefully cuddling a small animal writhing in their grip. And no, I am fine, just a bit of a head rush. I see, your body is your capital asset. Take care of it. He must have gone along with it even though Jerknev's excruciating excuse failed. He was waiting for the right moment to nail his prey. Or did he have a torture fetish? Or could you introduce them? I am Aints Ulgaun, King of Darkness, so he wanted to say that. Once a country's king had introduced himself, it was impossible to leave the room without another word. If he gave fake names, how would the king react if he knew their real identities? Stop toying with me. It was like his expression didn't move at all. Or rather, since he had neither skin nor flesh, his face was all bone.